Hello.
Hello, Joy. How you doing?
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. It's good to be here with you.
You too. Thanks so much for joining. Jesse, I had Penny on last month.
Yes,
Um, can you introduce yourself to those who may not know Uhuru 3?
absolutely. Thank you so much, Joy, for having me on, and thank you for
Absolutely.
your great interview with APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess. I did tune in for that. It was very powerful, and you do a great job. And I just want to appreciate you doing this event and encourage people who are tuning in to go to that description, click those links, donate, support this fundraiser, and continue to express our solidarity with the heroic people of Palestine who are engaged in a life or death struggle for national liberation and a struggle against colonialism, and just salute the heroic Palestinian resistance. And in terms of just kind of introduction, as you said, my name is Jesse Nevel, and I am the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Uhuru means freedom in Swahili, and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is an organization of white people that works under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And we work in the white community to win other white people to stand in solidarity with the Black liberation struggle, with African people inside the borders of the US and around the world, and in unity with all colonized and exploited and oppressed peoples around the world, the indigenous people, the Mexican people, the Palestinian people, all oppressed peoples around the world who are fighting for self-determination. And our work is specifically geared towards building a movement in the white community for reparations to African people. And the African People's Socialist Party is led and was founded over 50 years ago by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. He came out of the Black Power movement of the 1960s, and in 1972 co-founded the African People's Socialist Party with the goal to complete the Black Revolution of the 1960s. The goal of the African People's Socialist Party is the total liberation of Africa and African people everywhere, and the complete dismantling and defeat of colonialism that was built on the backs of African people and genocide against the vast majority of the peoples of the planet Earth. So Chairwoman Penny Hess is the leader of the African People's Solidarity Committee. That's the cadre organization that the party created back in 1976. And I'm also a member of that organization. Uhuru Solidarity Movement is our mass organization that exists now actually in over 130 cities throughout the US as well as in Canada.
Awesome. That's so amazing. I invited you on because you are an organizer, an activist, you do so much, but also because what you're going through very much correlates with what is going on as far as censorship and the lack of free speech and taking on apartheid, colonialism, trying to have a voice for something and then getting penalized for it. So for those who are tuning in who don't know what Uhuru 3 is, can you give a summary of what you and your two comrades are going through?
Yes. So I'll start by talking a little bit about when this sort of came to public view. It was on July 29th of 2022, so almost 2 years ago, at 5 o'clock in the morning here in St. Louis, Missouri, where I'm located, and 6 o'clock in the morning in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is an hour ahead. So it was coordinated between two states to happen at the same time. The US government, in the form of their secret political police organization known as the FBI, executed an incredibly violent military-style siege on the buildings of 7 homes and offices of leaders and members of the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party. The primary target of these FBI raids was the home of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and his wife, who's also a powerful leader in the African People's Socialist Party, the deputy chair of the APSP, Ona Zaneh Yeshitela, they were actually awake at their kitchen table at 5 a.m., getting ready to start their day and go to the Uhuru House Center in North St. Louis. And they live in, a deeply impoverished, exploited African working class community in North St. Louis. They were getting ready to go to the Uhuru House to preside over a training of African women from the community to become doulas and birth workers. Because this is the kind of work that the Uhuru movement does. It's about building self-determination and anti-colonial power in the hands of African people. So they're building this program to address the genocidal conditions of infant and maternal mortality faced by African women and mothers and parents and children and babies in this country. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, as they're sitting at their kitchen table, all of a sudden, there's this loudspeaker outside saying, "This is the FBI. Come down with your hands up, nothing in your hands, follow orders." They sent in drones. They banged through the doors with battering rams. They handcuffed them. They told them to sit on the curb to humiliate them, which they refused to do. And they used flashbang grenades and assault weapons and all kinds of military weaponry to basically raid their home for hours. And they did the same thing to the home of Penny Hess, who lives with another comrade, Kitty Riley. They did the same thing to Akile Anai, who's a young, brilliant leader in the African People's Socialist Party in Florida. They did the same thing to the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida. They did the same thing in this building where I'm sitting right now talking to you, which is the Uhuru Solidarity Center in South St. Louis in the white community. And finally, they did the same thing to my home, which is upstairs in the apartment above this office, where I live with my comrade and wife, Amanda. We were also handcuffed at gunpoint, and they raided this property for 6.5 hours. And, come to find out, and nobody was arrested that day, by the way. Even though people were handcuffed and put in the back of a police van, they eventually took the handcuffs off and said, "Oh, well, no one is actually under arrest." And we come to find out that they said, "Well, you're going to see in the news later today that a Russian national in Russia was indicted by the Department of Justice, and your name came up in relationship to that indictment. And so that's why they got these search warrants." And of course, what we come to learn is that the US government had indicted a Russian man named Alexander Ionov on this bogus conspiracy plot that the US government concocted, that this person in Russia, who they claim was working for the Russian government, was actually puppeteering the African People's Socialist Party in a criminal conspiracy to sow discord in the United States and interfere in so-called US democracy, right? So Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, myself, and Director Akile and I, we were characterized as unindicted co-conspirators in that first indictment. 9 months later, they indicted the three of us, and they indicted us on bogus, manufactured, absurd charges. One of conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States government, which has a 5-year prison sentence. And the other charge is functioning as an illegal foreign agent of a foreign government without notifying the Attorney General's office, which has a maximum prison sentence, 10 years in federal prison. And this is the first time they've ever indicted anyone using this law purely based on words. They didn't charge us, they didn't accuse us of engaging in bribery or, murder or drug trafficking or violence or of any kind, or blowing up buildings. They said that that the Uhuru movement, the chairman, made speeches, held meetings like this one, public events, that they published a petition to charge the United States government with the crime of genocide against African people, according to the United Nations Convention on the Punishment and Prevention of the Crime of Genocide, that the Uhuru movement waged a campaign for reparations to African people and spoke out against the U.S. support of the war, the U.S. funding of the U.S. proxy war against Russia. And all of these speeches and examples of political speech, which are supposed to be protected by the First Amendment in the so-called Bill of Rights of the US Constitution, were used as the basis for this indictment. And it's really clear that this attack on the Uhuru 3, the primary target is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. He's 82 years old. He is an incredible freedom fighter, leader, revolutionary leader, known and beloved by African people and other oppressed peoples around the world for fighting for more than 60 years of his life to complete the African Revolution and end the colonial suffering and misery that's been imposed on African people for hundreds of years to benefit white people, to benefit the colonizer, to enrich the colonial mode of production, as he calls it. And this is no different. This is consistent with the attacks that this government, the FBI, made against Marcus Garvey. The FBI cut its teeth going after Marcus Garvey in the 1920s. We know about COINTELPRO, where the US government, the FBI, waged vicious counterinsurgency war against the Black Revolution in the 1960s. And this is no different. This is a continuation of that. And if they were successful in convicting Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess and myself, it would be the end of the First Amendment as we know it. It would be the end of free speech. It would give them a green light to literally charge anyone they want at any time for saying anything they don't like, just by saying that a foreign government told you to say it. And all they have to say to prove that is that your views on that issue happen to align with the views of a foreign government. Joy, you probably saw Nancy Pelosi a few months ago go on TV and say she wants the FBI to investigate people who support Palestine for ties to Russia. So this is what they're trying to usher in. And that's why the case of the Uhuru 3 is so important. It's the test case that they're trying to use to usher in a new era of escalated repression of anti-colonial speech. And we can't let that happen. And that's why the Uhuru movement built the Hands Off Uhuru anti-colonial free speech movement that includes thousands of people and hundreds of organizations across the political spectrum who have come to rally behind the African People's Socialist Party and fight for the right of African people to advocate and organize for their liberation.
Absolutely. And, you know, shout out to Lauren, who introduced me to you guys. Yes. My dear friend. I'm sure she's watching. I love you. So, Matt, can you actually show the one clip I put in the DM? It's of a woman. It's a news clip of a woman. Let me see what it I really want to listen to Jesse's take on it. It's from today.
Okay.
It's there we go. It's 3 up from the bottom. It's a woman with gray hair. There we go.
The genesis of my move was actually a result of a joint report that the Department of State and the Department of Defense had to submit in response to a request from the White House. And that report was supposed to assess various countries on 2 things: their ability to adhere to international humanitarian law, also known as the Geneva Conventions or the law of war, and whether they facilitate and not obstruct humanitarian assistance. Israel was one of the countries. The other countries we were assessing, there was some debate, some discussion about, but not nearly on the level that we debated and discussed these issues regarding Israel. The subject matter experts are absolutely in agreement that Israel is blocking humanitarian assistance. There is no doubt about that. I was very involved in writing the report up to a certain level, but At some point, the subject matter experts were removed from the report. It was moved up to a higher level, and I myself didn't see it until it was released on May 10th. When it was released on May 10th, I was actually on the point of Israel's adherence to international humanitarian law. I was surprised because the report concluded, as far as I know, the first time the US has admitted that Israel is probably using US weapons to violate international humanitarian law. But I was shocked to see that it stated very clearly that we assess that Israel is not blocking humanitarian assistance. That is patently false. That is not the opinion. It's not just not the opinion. There is data that is showing that Israel is blocking humanitarian assistance.
How insane is that? And props to her because she resigned. So, but I mean, you think how many other times is this happening and the people don't have courage to come out? So you see again, people are being oppressed. So they have the job of looking over these things and determining, is, humanitarian aid being stopped? And they said yes. And it still comes out it's not. Now, we have all seen so many videos of them Israelis taking the food and smashing it and, destroying things and opening boxes of rice and pouring them on the ground and all of these things. And yet still they come out with that report. What are your thoughts on that as someone who's, being silenced?
Well, yeah, I think one thing it made me think of, I think it's really important that we refuse to be complicit with this genocide that's being carried out and with colonialism in general. And, somebody in the Uhuru Solidarity movement we really uphold and respect is Aaron Bushnell. And the stance that he took, the statement that he gave in the moments leading up to his death, when he said, "I refuse to be complicit in genocide." And that this is what this kind of imposed starvation, hideous brutality that's being carried out, savage, appalling slaughter that's being carried out by the US-backed state of Israel is what the colonial ruling class wants to be normal. They want that to be the norm, something that we just accept. And that, whether we are in the US military or working in the Biden administration or just regular old white people, we have a responsibility to break our complicity from this social system. And as Chairman Omali Shatella says, to abandon colonialism, to abandon the interests of our own ruling class and find our true interests. Our real human interests are not with Biden and these people, or with the colonial bourgeoisie, but with African people, with Palestinian people, with indigenous people, with the rest of humanity. We can be a part of the human family, but only when we take responsibility for the legacy of colonialism that we inherit and that we have historically carried out and been complicit with, and take the stand of reparations and take the stand of solidarity with African and colonized peoples of the world. And I think this question of Israel, just to say something about that, the idea of Israel committing war crimes or the U.S. committing war crimes reminds me of another statement from Chairman Omali Shatella. He says that America is a war crime. The U.S. the existence of the United States is a war crime. The existence of the state of Israel is a war crime. It's not just that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Israel is itself the product of genocide, of an ongoing, nearly century-long process of colonial genocide against the Palestinian people. And I say, as a Jewish person, and I know there are many other Jewish people out there, especially in these times, who refuse to, go along with this assumption of automatic allegiance to the so-called Jewish state. This idea that we're fed growing up that the Jewish identity is intrinsically bound with undying, unquestioning loyalty to the state of Israel. I think those days are over. I think the Palestinians have themselves have shattered forever with their brave and courageous resistance that odious and false notion that we're given as Jewish people. And I think more and more Jews want to stand with the Palestinian resistance. And one of the things that we've done in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party is form a working group called Jews Against Colonialism, because we believe that Jewish people have a responsibility and an interest to stand with the Palestinian people and to stand with African and indigenous and colonized peoples everywhere. And that is not the same as saying that we're for peace, quote unquote, or that we're for a two-state solution or something like that, or putting terms and conditions on what kind of Palestinian resistance we are going to support. The Palestinian people have a right to free their land, to free their people by any means necessary. And we don't have the right to say, oh, well, you have the right to resist, but only when you do it this way. Right. The Palestinian people have a right to use whatever means available to them to fight for their liberation. And all of that land belongs to the Palestinian people, all of it. They say from the river to the sea, every last inch belongs to the Palestinian people. And the state of Israel is modeled on the largest, oldest colonial settler state in the world, the one we live in. The United States is a colonial settler state built on genocide, built on slavery, built on ongoing colonial oppression of African people and indigenous people, Mexican people who are colonized within the borders of the US. And we have to, be able to see that as white people. We can't walk over the Palestine right here that we stand on to protest what the same system is doing in other parts of the world. And Palestinian and African people have always been locked at the hip in a struggle against colonialism. African people, I'm in St. Louis in 2014, as is well known, when the African community rose up after the murder of Mike Brown. Palestinian people were sending messages to the people in Ferguson on how to deal with tear gas and how to respond to the kinds of repression being meted out against them, because it's one system. It's one colonial system. Chairman O'Malley says there's not many colonialisms. There's one colonial mode of production built on the backs of the enslavement of African people and the genocide of indigenous people and colonialism, carried out around the world. And therefore there's one anti-colonial struggle, and we can be a part of it as the colonizers. The colonizers can become anti-colonialists. And that's what this is about.
That is, wow. I got to have you back on when we have more time, and have Chairman O'Malley as well, for sure. Definitely. Give people an update. Your trial's in September, right?
Yes. So thank you so much, Joy. Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah, for sure.
And shout out to Lauren. Yeah, Lauren is an awesome here. Incredible. Really salute Comrade Lauren. And yes, we do have a trial. Right now, the trial is set to begin in Tampa, Florida, in the federal court on September 3rd. And we are calling on everybody to be there. Anybody and everybody who can be there should do everything you can to be in Tampa for that trial. You can go to handsoffuhuru.org/trial, and there's actually a form you can fill out to let us know that you're planning to come, what days you can be there. There's a lot of different teams you can actually be a part of. Like there's a whole media team that's going to be working on covering the trial while it's happening, and other kinds of organization. There's going to be rallies, there's going to be teach-ins, there's going to be events. There's going to be a lot happening both in the court and outside the court in September. And they're expecting it to be a month-long trial. So they think that they're putting Chairman O'Malley, Shatella, and the Uhuru 3 on trial, but the chairman has said it from the beginning, no, the people, the African Revolution is putting the state on trial. They're putting the FBI on trial. They're putting colonialism on trial. And that's definitely not something anybody would want to miss. So handsoffuhuru.org is where you can get more information.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. It was wonderful to finally meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Thank you, Joy. Talk to you soon.